Thanks to Linode for supporting this episode of SciShow. You can go to linode.com/scishow to learn more and get a $100 60-day credit on a new Linode account. In September of 2022, archaeologists in Borneo announced the discovery of the remains of a person who had had their lower leg amputated, possibly during that person's childhood. That person survived for several more years, as evidenced by the leg having fully healed. The twist here: the remains were 31,000 years old. The discovery was further evidence that the practice of caring for our sick or injured companions is way older than previously thought, and knowing exactly how old can help us understand our ancestors' capacity for compassion. The research team in Borneo is pretty confident that the missing foot was an intentional amputation because of the way the bones were broken and the way that the fractured bones healed. And it all happened many thousands of years before the previous oldest intentional amputation on record, which dates to just 7,000 years ago. This tells us a few major things about this group of people from 31,000 years ago. One, they knew enough about the body to know when amputation was necessary and how to do it. Two, they had the tools and skills to perform precise surgical procedures. And three, they were also willing to care for one of their group members while they recovered from surgery, and for the rest of that person's life as a permanently disabled individual. This, at its core, is healthcare. So, what is healthcare anyway? Well, it's more than just some people in white coats sticking a patient with needles. Most narrowly, healthcare is the organized system of direct support for someone's physical acute needs. Basically, making them better, but it's also considered giving healthcare to accommodate someone's permanent or chronic needs to allow that person to live longer than they otherwise would without care. And some of the earliest evidence for the practice of healthcare is a lot older than you'd think. We have evidence that healthcare is not even unique to our species, which can give us insight into some of our other hominin relatives and their capacity for care. Remains from a 1.7 million year old site in the Republic of Georgia called Dmanisi include the skull of a Homo erectus individual with major gaps in their smile. The individual's jaw shows evidence that they had lost all but one of their teeth due to either disease or aging. While losing your teeth is not great in the long run, the invention of tools like juicers or blenders with more horsepower than a car means that getting enough calories to stay alive is possible, even without pearly whites. However, Homo erectus was not quite so technologically developed as we are today, which begs the question, what did this individual eat? It's debatable whether this population would have been able to cook their foods at all. But we know that this toothless individual lived for years after losing their teeth, since their sockets were closed over in a process called resorption. So we know that they had access to something soft they could get their gums on. At the time, the soft foods that were available to them would be things like bone marrow, brain tissue, or soft plants, likely mashed up or cut up using stone tools, which takes extra time and energy to do. So when it came time for this Homo erectus group to gather for dinner, this individual's need for specific foods was made clear, and the group would have traded or given those foods to this individual. And the whole group was okay with this adjustment for years. That's a long time to be giving away some of what were likely prime pieces of protein. Now, we don't know the extent to which this food sharing happened, but it's likely the individual in question's needs were supported, at least in part, by their companions. We also know that caring for sick and injured group members is not unique to Homo erectus. Our evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals, went even further than Homo erectus in providing care to group members. By and large, Neanderthals in the fossil record have a lot of injuries, more than we see in earlier hominin species, suggesting that their lives were dangerous and survival in their environments involved a lot of bumps and bruises. For example, anthropologists discovered an individual from a site in Iraq called Shanidar who'd been through the ringer. He was either fully or partially blind in one eye, was missing one hand and forearm, sported several leg and foot deformities, and had both a degenerative joint disease and hearing impairment. And somehow, he still lived to be between 35 and 50 years old, which was the standard lifespan for a Neanderthal adult. He wouldn't have been able to hunt or gather food as effectively as his healthier companions, so it seems likely that the only way he could have survived was if someone was providing him food and assistance every day. Another individual from France showed signs of tooth loss, arthritis in his back, shoulders, and jaw, a fractured rib, and degeneration of his foot bones, and he also lived to be a pretty normal adult age between 25 and 40 years old. Keeping both of these individuals alive that long would have required managing fevers, keeping them clean, and repositioning their joints as they healed from their various injuries. Plus, both of these individuals would have had limited mobility for life, and their groups would need to help them travel long distances as the group moved around. So it seems like Neanderthals had a pretty high capacity for care, which is not surprising. In a species where as many as 80 to 90% of adults suffer at least one traumatic injury in their lifetimes. And they didn't just support these injured group members. They probably used medicine to treat their injuries too. Tartar on the teeth of Neanderthals from Spain indicates that they ate yarrow and chamomile, both of which are extremely bitter and not pleasant to eat, but do have medicinal benefits. So they probably were not eating them for funsies or as a primary food source, since there were much tastier things to eat. Other Neanderthals' plaque contained traces of poplar, a plant that has lots of salicylic acid in it. Salicylic acid is the active ingredient in aspirin, so these individuals may have been using it as an early form of pain management. And at the Iraqi site where archaeologists found Shanidar, they also found a burial site where an individual appears to have been buried with a whole bunch of medicinal plants, including yarrow, cornflower, ragwort, and ephedra. So these plants may not have just been useful. They may have been important enough to these people to include them in burials along with other grave goods. This is not the only interpretation of the site, however. Some have argued that the flowers may not have been put there by Neanderthals at all and were brought by rodents storing food. Whether this flower burial represents a ceremonial practice using medicinal plants or just a shared cave with a hungry rodent, we do know that Neanderthals had a pretty high level of understanding of many medicinal plants in their environment. But this also raises a pretty big question. Why was it so important to all these different hominins to keep their sick and injured group members alive? Some anthropologists think these care behaviors might have evolved to increase group survival rates in societies where individuals were all super dependent on each other. For example, some foods need to be processed after they are gathered and brought to camp. So maybe your injured group mate can't hunt for elks, but he can crack nuts all day. This ability and willingness to care for each other might also have allowed Neanderthals to move into northern areas where there was more risk for disease, famine, injury, and, freezing to death, because providing healthcare meant individuals actually had a chance to survive their injuries. Of course, it's also possible that Homo erectus and Neanderthals just liked their friends and family and wanted to keep them around longer. Sadly, compassion and love do not fossilize, so with these species long gone, we probably will never know their exact motivations for providing healthcare to each other. But what we do know is that it suggests they had a relatively high capacity for empathy, plus the cognitive ability necessary to take care of each other. And in the end, compassion and empathy are what drives most modern healthcare too. So, it sounds like individuals have had the cognitive ability to take care of each other for a long time, but the cognitive ability to work a computer is much newer. And that's why we need this video's sponsor, Linode, a cloud computing company from Akamai. They power the internet by providing additional storage space, databases, analytics, and more to you or your company across the world. With cloud computing, everything is online when you need it. So everyone from professors to business tycoons to gamers can benefit from Linode's resources. Their website is full of tutorials for how to use their services in innovative ways, like hosting a grading platform, a business website, or a gaming server. To see all that Linode has to offer, click the link in the description or head to linode.com/scishow. That link will give you a $100 60-day credit on a new Linode account.